I want to start off this review with a combination of words that should strike fear and boredom into your heart. Marvel Rivals is the new hero shooter by NetEase. That, on paper, is a terrifying sentence. The Marvel property, which many people are tired of, combined with a hero shooter, a genre that's much too crowded, and made by NetEase, a publisher associated with live services and overly expensive microtransactions that's never really made a game before. This is why it's so surprising, and I want you to listen, because with things looking so dire, it's going to require some convincing. But Marvel Rivals, so far, is way better than it has any right to be. And it's doing many things, all of which I'll talk about in this review, that make it a lot more than an Overwatch clone. So welcome, I'm Mugthief, and this is my review of Marvel Rivals. Now let's get the big part out of the way. Yes, Marvel Rivals is very much Overwatch, down to a lot of details. It's like going from your neighborhood pool to a friend's pool. Sure, the size and shape of the pool, the grass or concrete next to it, that might be different, but the act of swimming is still very much the same. There's many theories and reactions to that, and some people say that when NetEase and Blizzard's agreement for publishing games in China was broken, thanks to Bobby Kotick, NetEase decided, for the first time mind you, to develop their own in-house game to simply make an Overwatch competitor to fill the void that Blizzard left in the Chinese market. They leveraged the fact that they dealt with the Marvel license before and almost fueled by spite against Blizzard, and with their knowledge of Overwatch, made Marvel Rivals. How much truth there is to that story, I can't say, but it does at least make sense. I've also now seen plenty of people, especially Overwatch fans, calling the game a shameless ripoff and dismissing it immediately as Overwatch, but worse. And to me, a person that has several thousand hours in Overwatch, this is an unhealthy attitude, because no matter how much it takes from Overwatch, whatever it adds can be seen as interesting additions and designs that Blizzard could learn from. And while there are plenty of problems with this game, especially in balance, and do keep in mind this is a closed beta, I think that what NetEase has pulled off is remarkably impressive. So, here's the short review. This game is a ton of fun. If you can get into the beta, try it, whether you're an Overwatch fan or completely new. And if you can't get in, put it on your radar. I don't know what the future holds for it, I don't know if it'll flop, if it'll gain momentum and be a powerhouse, or if the developers will ruin it. But I can promise it's worth a look at launch and you'll have a blast playing it, even if it's for 2 or 3 days. If you're here for the long review, well, I have a lot to say about it. But first, I'm incredibly excited to introduce this video sponsor, and I'm not kidding. Boot.dev is an online learning platform for back-end development, but it combines two things that I personally love together, which are teaching and gaming. It's a way of learning back-end web development, specifically Python and Go, but through a fun gamified RPG system. When the folks over there told me that the most important part about a learning process is for people to be engaged and having fun throughout it, well, as a person who's been teaching for 8 years, I couldn't agree more. And so the entire philosophy of Boot.dev is for you to have fun, code a ton, and learn the practical way. The lessons are structured in a way that you're going to earn XP, levels, complete quests, and then eventually keep unlocking more tasks to complete, all while learning. And that's why all of the content on their site is free to read and watch, so you can check out if it's for you. Once you sign up for a membership, you unlock the interactive part and the game that comes with it to put everything into practice. And even then, they have a 30-day no questions asked refund policy. With backend dev being one of the most sought after and best paying jobs in the world at the moment and only getting better, a team and a tool that just wants you to learn the right way is invaluable. So you can use the link in the description below to explore the site and use code Mugthief to get 25% off of your first purchase. That means it's 25% off your first month or your first year, whatever it is. And you can thoroughly check it out, learn a ton, and see if it's for you completely for free. And thank you very much to Boot.dev for being a sponsor that I can be really happy about placing in my videos. If there's one word that comes to mind when playing this game, it's the word fun. It feels like the goal overall was to make it fun, and like the people making it had a lot of fun doing so. It feels like whenever a question popped up in development, should we do this, should we do that, they always decided what is the most fun thing we could do. Now, that doesn't always prove easy when you take balance into account, but surprisingly, I haven't found the overall foundations of the game to be so out of whack that they're just unviable. Instead, I think that it still has the legs to be competitive while being a game covered in chaos and making characters feel overpowered. In many ways, it feels like you're playing Overwatch 1 way back at launch, but with a lot of lessons from the last 8 years taken into account with its design. This is, after all, a 6v6 hero shooter without role queue, where characters can be broadly classified as main and off tank, main and off healer, and main and utility DPS. With Overwatch teasing themselves that they'll be going back to 6v6 later this year, I can say that while I like the 5v5 format, the chaotic nature of 6v6 that's present here is so much more fun for casual play especially. It's madness, but in the best way. Most of how the game works is that you pick a composition for your team with different tanks, DPS, and supports, and then you play different game modes. And really, if you've played Overwatch ever, you will quickly understand what's going on. From King of the Hill to Escort to combinations of capture point and then Escort, this is all what you'd expect. And a lot of the maps are very similar in basic layout to Overwatch maps, but with some small changes along the way. I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It can border on a copy of Overwatch's maps, but there's also plenty of twists, and there's a line there to be crossed. I know some people are going to say they're stealing, and other people will rightfully say that there's only so many ways to design fun hallways in a 6v6 shooter. And even with that, they try and do different things here and there. Now, when I say it's a copy of Overwatch, that might sound negative, and many a comment I've seen frames it that way. But to copy Overwatch well is not an easy feat. For as much as Blizzard has ruined their own hero shooter in the eyes of many, between the cancellation of PvE, the switch to 5v5, and a whole list of things, there's also a reason that 40,000 people play it daily on Steam alone, and I'd wager that at least anywhere from 5 to 10 times that amount play it on the Blizzard launcher. Oh, and consoles as well. And that's because Overwatch is still an excellent game, and Marvel Rivals nails most of the things from it. That feeling of organized chaos that the more you play, you start to see the strategy behind it, the way that you start calculating cooldown management but still have to be perfectly deadly efficient with your shots and your aim, the way that the different roles and heroes interact and how they're designed, all of them approachable, but also with tons of depth to learn and implement match after match, and in each different map, as you get better at so many different things all at once. It's all here, including the moment-to-moment team fights that make everything so exciting, be that in a competitive setting or with your friends having fun. It's just that here, instead of it being an FPS with original characters, it's a third-person shooter, and they took the Marvel property to do the heavy lifting for them. So let's just say that the bones here are solid. The UI, the hero selection, the maps, the netcode, the feedback, down to kill cams and stats and highlights. They've done a lot of work to make this have an appropriate, if not all the way there to 100% level of polish, with certain standouts like sound design and visual feedback for combat, which still isn't great. It's not very good at telling you where you're getting hit from just yet, but it feels great to hit things with appropriately satisfying sounds when you land headshots and get eliminations. Every ability feels impactful. So even the small details of the core, I think, are taken care of or are almost there. But it's the details and what's new that makes it all shine for me. So let's start with heroes, because you're going to spot some hero archetypes here that you've seen plenty of times before. And you'll spot some heroes that are just completely identical to others, with Magneto being so similar to Overwatch's Sigma that it's painful. But otherwise, a lot of the variations, innovations, and even evolutions that Rivals brings to the table are what's really worth talking about and highlight the feeling of focusing on what's fun while still being in many ways a very different game. Some of these are obvious but very smart. Spider-Man, for which I have no decent footage because he's very difficult to play and I'm bad at these sorts of characters, is basically an evolution of Genji. Instead of constantly poking from afar before going in for the kill, He's just melee, but he still requires skill in aiming, be that up close or from afar, because he can tag people with his web slinger, which will change how his moves work on that person, specifically pulling them in or pulling himself in towards them to then combo them. Other characters are more reinterpretations, like Scarlet Witch, which has Moira's primary fire, a short-range beam that charges up her secondary fire, which allows her to launch long-range chaos blasts with a little bit of an AoE damage area. She can also set up a stun orb in a location, and she can fade like Reaper, disappearing from the world so that she can't get damaged, although she also can't get healed, and she can also float around and can hover on her descent. And her ultimate turns her into a living bomb. But during the charge up for it, she is completely vulnerable, so this requires a little bit of coordination with your team or some excellent positioning. Rocket, on the other hand, as a support, has his primary fire as a machine gun that's very similar to Orissa's. It's not quite hit scan, but it's also not a very slow projectile, but his right clicks are Moira's healing orbs, except he could just shoot them all of the time. He can also set up a station that can revive allies when they die, and his ultimate sets up a damage boost to everyone in the area. And when I look at these things, I keep thinking there's a design philosophy around taking what was most fun about some characters and then using that, while still making them fit in with who they are in Marvel. And while everything seems crazy strong, most everything I've encountered has counters, especially if you're prepared and looking for it. Luna Snow's ultimate basically works like Zenyatta's ultimate, providing a ton of incredibly fast healing to everybody in the circle, basically making them immortal. But a well-placed Scarlet Witch ultimate will wipe out the team. You might initially think that the idea of Rocket's ultimate being a damage amp might seem like Baptiste's amplification matrix, but easier. But in reality, it makes sense when so much of Marvel Rivals' cast is very short range or directly melee, and most of them have a lot of vertical mobility or can straight up fly. And then it makes more sense to place something destructible that gives the effect to everyone in the area. It is this sort of consideration when remixing already familiar abilities or concepts, and the way that it takes inspiration from other things besides Overwatch, with some characters and abilities taking things from other MOBAs and mixing them into their own original spin. Including one of my favorite characters, which is Penny Parker. If you had to classify her, she's an off-tank, and she places a spider nest that constantly deploys spider mines. And she herself can deploy mines while having an unlimited ammo, low damage web shooter. She's also very slow, but she can shoot webs to move quickly around every 3 seconds. On her alternate fire, she shoots out a web that she can either place on the environment or use to very briefly stun or interrupt an enemy. And when I say place a web, that's because her spider nest and her secondary allow her to place webs in the environment, and when walking on webs, she is faster, shoots faster, and regens HP. Now let me tell you, this is one of the simpler kits in the game, honestly, because this game goes hard. There are characters here with 5 or 6 buttons to press in different moments. But Penny herself is this interesting idea, a unique tank playstyle centered around setting up a little base and protecting it with your mines for huge damage to then convert into a very disruptive ultimate. And she also showcases the choices that you have to make, like using your web to give yourself power or to interrupt the enemy, or setting up the spider nest in a place to protect a specific choke point, or to use it in a more dive-oriented way by placing it behind enemies and allowing for the dive to happen with a little bit of extra support. Even during her ultimate, you'll have to make the choice of placing mines everywhere you go or swiping at enemies to try and push them away or eliminate them. And it's the fact that Penny is a great character and a ton of fun to play and master that shows me that the team over at NetEase aren't content just copying everything. They also have their own cool ideas and mishmashes to put out. Now, some of these ideas are cool. Others are interesting. So look, this game does seem designed to someday be competitively viable. But balance is something that isn't really there all the time or even any of the time. And having many different things to balance complicates things further. And Rivals adds one very interesting thing. team-ups. Having different pairings of heroes together will add new effects to them, from straight-up passive buffs to completely new abilities. Some of these are absurdly strong. Pairing Magneto with Wanda will give Wanda some extra damage, but also unlock an extra ability for Magneto where he can shoot chaos energy from his sword, and it does absurd damage, although it's on a very long 22-second cooldown. Rocket can give the Punisher infinite ammo and an increased fire rate in a zone he can place, and Rocket himself has a team-up where he can ride Groot and gain more defenses while he's on him. Venom gives extra symbiote abilities to the Parkers. And there's of course some more of these, some of them more impactful, some of them less. It's a cool concept that makes you rethink team comps to take advantage of these things. I've played Hulk more than once to buff my Doctor Strange and Iron Man, despite Hulk being the worst character in the game. And sure, I was useless, but I made my team stronger and let them have fun. In quick play, never in ranked. I don't care that it's a beta, I'm not playing Hulk in ranked. Also, please buff Hulk. Like, what, dude? Seriously, you think this character is competitively viable? Sorry, old habits die hard, I guess. Now, where will these team-ups go and how will they impact the meta? I don't know, but at least it's cool. It offers fantasy fulfillment, and most importantly, they're fun. It's the rule of fun here. Everybody enjoys feeling like they're a little bit OP, like they have an unfair advantage. Now, could this lead to a toxic meta down the line where team-ups are mandatory and you must learn every meta character in each role to use those team-ups? Probably. But how is that different from Overwatch anyways? Now, another new addition are destructible environments that constantly respawn throughout the match. This means that certain power positions will be strong only for a little while until they're gone, and using them in combat to your advantage still hasn't worn off for me, even if they've become slightly predictable in how maps play out. I still remember sometimes, oh, right, I can shoot this thing down and then put someone in a dangerous position by shooting the floor under them and having them fall. And then the other very noticeable element is how these maps, while they have similar layouts to other maps you've seen, take verticality into account. These maps are built to better condense the play space to make managing certain heroes easier, because you can and will find yourself in a match where there's a Venom and a Spider-Man swinging in the skies, as well as a Star-Lord or an Iron Man or a Doctor Strange, which are all flying. When you have characters with this much vertical mobility, so much so that Storm and Iron Man are just permanently in flight, you need to have more constraints on the map, and those have been implemented in design to account for it, and for there to be appropriate responses with hit scan characters and snipers. And it's also been carefully considered so that snipers can more easily target flying enemies that are slower in general than those that are on the ground. See what I mean? There's consideration here. There's some smart stuff. And when it comes to the concept itself of this being a Marvel game, it might seem like they're piggybacking off the license, but there's a lot of care put into these characters, from their animations to their intros to their voice actors, which range from MCU sound-alikes that are pitch perfect to classics like Travis Willingham as Thor or Yuri Lowenthal from Helldivers 2 fame. Okay, fine, yeah, from Spider-Man being the voice of Spider-Man. Their lines and banter is often witty and funny, with references for those who know, but also doing a decent job at explaining relationships to those who don't. And while I've seen people criticize the looks of the game, I think it looks superb. Visual clarity has been perfect once you get used to the chaos, and these characters and models look amazing, as do some of their skins. Sure, some are better than others, and they have more animations or better blending, but from the currently limited maps to the huge roster, it communicates the whimsy of the Marvel Universe in a way that I enjoy, and that's something I haven't done since Endgame. I promise you, every time I play Loki and I just look at the guy move, the way that he snaps his fingers to teleport, I love it. And of course, there are complaints, certain balance points, namely the Punisher at the moment, which it's really painful, because he's a high damage hit scan character with good mobility that can gain a 600 HP turret, and if he ever gets dove, he can melt tanks with a shotgun. And the fact that he has a team up with Rocket Raccoon, it's just, this is questionable design at best. Other issues include things like audio lines for ultimates, which are the same on your team and on the enemies, and that can be very confusing. Performance overall can be iffy, and I'm speaking as somebody with a 4090, so I don't want to know how it runs on other PCs, but probably not very optimized. And if there's any particular reason for this to still be a closed beta, it's because that performance. And I think most importantly at the moment, it's the lottery of even getting to play it. The closed beta test keys have been a huge issue, as getting a referral key requires you to be spamming the button on daily reset, since they are limited. And Twitch Drop, for those who didn't get in, only grant you access to request a key. The strategy here seems to be building a hype by making people desperate to play the game from those who play it. But many people cannot play it, and given the current circumstance, I wonder if they are doing this angle a bit too hard. I was lucky to get in on pure luck, by the way. My expectations for the game were low, so I didn't apply to the creator program or anything of the sort. And I would like it if more people could try and experience what I'm saying here, because the game is just a lot of fun. It's hooked me in this way that Overwatch did way back when, where each match is fun. Each time I play, I improve and understand more, and I can't help but say, just one more match for multiple hours at a time. Will this end up being an incredibly expensive festival of microtransactions? I don't know. All I can say is that I'm having a blast playing it, and that I'm happy Overwatch has a very, very direct competition. And I find myself excited to play and dreaming up new locations for future maps and kits for future heroes. And given that we saw the reveal and playtest of Jeff the Shark and Thor during this beta test, I think it's safe to say that we can expect both big names and small ones. And I, for one, am happy to see it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope I communicated my excitement and my surprise at Marvel Rivals. A very special thanks to the patrons. A special thanks to my patrons. There's a lot of them now. I never expected to have this many. Thank you so much. They're up on the $1 patron wall. It's called that way because there's only one tier, $1. Comes with a bunch of benefits. Check it out in the description below. I've been Mugthief, and as always, I'll see you again very soon.